Welcome to Beyond the Riverwalk, the local weekly podcast that brings San Antonio's most remarkable people, places, and events directly to you. All links discussed will be in the show notes, so sit back, relax, and join Kevin and Melissa Barron as they ask the questions that you would. Now, let's get the conversation started.
Welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Riverwalk. Today, we are doing an on-location recording for the first time. And we got some new equipment, and we're trying it out. So give us some feedback when you listen. Tell us what the audio quality was, and if there's any suggestions you have for the future. But today, I'm excited because we are out in Elmendorf, Texas. We are at the San Antonio Railroad Heritage Museum. I get the acronym wrong, but I got the name right. And the funny thing is, it has been something I've been looking forward to for so long. I've been following them on social media, and they've done some movie stuff. I mean, it's a great story. But we've got two guests today. One of them is Gary Rodriguez. Gary is the president of the organization. I've been kind of corresponding with him back and forth a little bit. And also we have another member who's the treasurer of the organization, B.L. Miers. So both of these guys have railroad history. They also have a lot of knowledge about what the organization's doing and what the future of it's going to be. So if you would join us and welcome with me, Gary and B.L. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming down and visiting.
Oh, you're very welcome. Let's see. We'll move that a little bit closer. All right. So let's get started, I guess. What's your background in the railroad, and what's led you to be part of this or to build this organization?
Well, for me, it's been since I was a little kid. As if my mom was here, she could tell you my first words was no, mommy or mom, and then trains.
And trains.
Or choo-choo or whatever. I don't think I ever said choo-choo. I think it was just train.
I've heard her say this story many times.
I grew up in Laredo. Well, not fully. I was there till I was about 4, but my mom used to, there's nothing in Laredo at that time back in the early 80s, that was really worth doing. And she used to take me down to watch the trains because she saw I was fascinated by seeing trains. So we used to go down to the Missouri Pacific Yard and watch them shove the trains across the bridge, the international bridge, that is. Yeah. And it stuck with me. And the part that really did it for me for the love of the railroad was the yard crews got used to seeing my mom bring me down there. And, you see a lady by herself or with her mother and a little boy. So I remember it very distinctly. The crew had me come up on the engine. They carried me up there, and my mom doesn't really remember it too well, but for me, it was, a very critical memory because he sat me on his knee in the control stand when they took the engine ahead. I'm looking out that window, and you hear the sound of the engine running and all that. Yeah. I mean, what do you think that does for a little 3-year-old kid? I mean, that just was instant, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I've pursued railroading since that time. And now I'm an engineer. Or a trainman engineer. The company I work for is actually just up the road here in Elmendorf.
Okay.
Alamo Junction Rail Park. So I work the ground, work the engine. It's just I love doing it. Obviously I've got a little burn this summer. So. But when I really started working in the railroad field was about 2004. There was a contract railroad shop downtown San Antoni in the old SP. Incidentally, Texas, New Orleans roundhouse, the only one left in existence now. But the company was called Trans-Texas Rail, and at the time, it was owned by Mr. Harold Schroeder. He did passenger car rebuilds, freight car rebuilds, stuff like that. But his love was the passenger cars. And he had actually decided to take on contract work for Union Pacific, doing locomotive maintenance and upkeep. At the time, the UP had a fleet of locomotives set aside they called the South Texas Rock Fleet, which was some of the older engines that, it had some miles on them. So they designated them to run nothing but the rock trains. So that's all we maintained. We occasionally get some of the yard switchers in from the yard just up the street that got damaged or derailed or something. But, I did that from 2004 to 2006. He lost the contract. Another contractor came in. I was only there for 6 months because that contracting company did not know what they were doing. They pretty much ran it into the ground. From there, I went to work for another contractor for the Union Pacific, hauling their crews around. And I worked as a driver for, I think it was like 2 years. Then I was a dispatcher and worked up to area manager. And from there, I went to the intermodal terminal with UP, another contractor, what they call SAIT. It's over on the southwest side of San Antonio, just outside 410 off of Fisher Road. I worked there for 2 years, basically, working the ground, working all their trains. And that's where I really learned the switching aspect of railroading. 12 hours of nothing but trains coming at you. And it's that I guarantee you that is one of the most fast-paced jobs I ever worked. Because, you'd get done with one train, you got another one right on your back door going, hey, we're ready to come in. We need to drop off cars. We need to get going. We only have this many hours left to work. We got to go. So it was get things done as quick as possible, as safely as possible. So, and then from there, I came out here to where I've been for the last 5 years now. So I love it out here. But yeah, I've pursued railroading. That's what I wanted to do. Everybody goes, oh, what do you want to do? I want to work for the railroad. Well, you said that since you were little. Yeah. It didn't change.
Well, you're one of the fortunate folks that's got that career path from early days, right? I know when I went to college, my ideas of what I wanted to do changed a couple of times. So it made me want to stay a little longer to make sure I could still get a degree. But yeah, this is amazing. And so how'd you get involved in this organization?
Oh, that's kind of a long story.
We'll save it then.
Well, it's not one. I don't want to get into putting down other organizations or anything, or opening up things that don't need to be said. But basically, we were part of another organization. Myself and a couple of the other guys, we didn't all come together at once. But when I left the other organization, I was like, you know what? I still love doing this. Let's create our own.
Oh, okay.
And we did that, and it was about 2001 when we started really discussing it. We didn't formally get the organization together until about 2003, 2004, but we got our 501c3 in 2005.
Okay.
So
October 26th,
yeah. In fact, we got it in a week.
Wow.
Everybody said that's like a record. We submitted it, and a week later, 7 days, we had the approval letter from the IRS.
Wow.
Which was, that's really awesome. And then, our goal has been for the organization from the beginning is to become kind of more than just the Railroad Museum for San Antonio, but to be the premier railroad museum in the Southwest of our area. Because you've got California State Railroad Museum. When you talk to people that do the Railroad Museum circuit type stuff, California State Railroad Museum, big name. Illinois Railroad Museum up in Union, Illinois. That's another one. Everybody knows about them. They have a beautiful collection. Strasburg, they're another one up in Pennsylvania. You also got Steamtown up there. And you've got some other new ones that have come up, like Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. Those guys are some phenomenal people. They do some great work. Another one is the Niles Canyon group in California. They just incidentally finished up the only remaining cross-Mafia locomotive in the United States. Actually, I think it's on this side of the world that's left. Cross Mafia was a German company. They did a brief stint of trying to get into the American/North American continent market.
Okay, yeah.
A couple of their engines were in Brazil, but what they tried here was between the Southern Pacific and the Rio Grande railroads. And at the time, this was back in the 70s, 60s, something like that, where they were trying to come up with new, maybe better means of operating locomotives. Well, these are diesel hydraulic, not diesel electric.
Okay.
They didn't go over too well. When you start getting into stuff that big, and then the next thing came up was, well, we've got everything diesel electric. If we're going to get in this diesel hydraulic, that means we got to get all the shops converted. Yeah. All the shops got to get trained. So it was a great experiment, and it died. And the unit they've got, which is called the SP9010, the only reason it was saved, the Southern Pacific converted it into a camera car. And the purpose of it, when they were doing the, classroom stuff, they'd go out and they use this camera car to go take video recordings of the right-of-ways. and it was the training simulator. That's what it was.
Okay, yeah.
And they take these videos and they set up a simulator for the engineers so they can get recertified or get trained on, so that you could it would follow the right of ways, and they had it all hooked up.
Wow.
And so the video was used to represent the right of way, and then the simulator is connected to it. So it was a pretty elaborate, fancy thing they had going, and that's why they used the
Pretty
video.
neat way to save it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they that unit had been used for that for years and years and years, and then they just let it sit. And then I don't know when exactly it was donated. The history on that's a little vague to me. I don't remember on it, but I think it went to California State Rare Museum, but somehow they ended up with it. But anyway, they decided, hey, you know what? Let's rebuild this thing. And they had to completely reconstruct the nose because the Southern Pacific had built a box on it. Basically took the original nose off because they had all the camera equipment, all that stuff was in there. Well, when they got it, they just took it all off. Those guys did one of the most complete restorations I've ever seen. Fabricated an all new nose from scratch. I mean, it's unbelievable. The thing looks like it's brand new. But they were able to get, I believe, they got the guys that did the transmissions was Maybach, or was it the engines? One of the two. But the company that built the engine, Cross Mafia, still exists. It's under another company now, I believe. But they've helped them out. They've helped them get drivetrain parts that were gone. They've helped them get the engine parts that were missing, the transmission stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they helped them with. You can go to their website and get all the technical and the further information on it. But, I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to be able to sit down. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have a Cross Mafia, but we want to sit down and have that level of restoration that people can look at it and go, it went from that to this. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's groups like that gain the attention of everybody. I mean, obviously, look at me. I know enough about it because I've been following it.
Yeah.
But, those are the ones that get people's attention. Those are the ones that people go to. You've got tons of little railroad museums out there, but it's just the ones that really will draw the attention is the ones people remember.
Yeah. They're doing these projects.
Exactly.
Yeah. And create some buzz around them.
Yeah.
So, B.L., what's your background? How'd you get into all this?
When I was 2 years old, my parents gave me an N-scale 040 Bachmann ore train. I don't remember if it was birthday or Christmas or what, but that was my first introduction to railroading, and I've loved it ever since. I was born in Rolla, Missouri, the son of a professional broadcast radio and television engineer, the grandson of a man that owned 5 different radio stations across the Midwest, and that's how my mom and dad met, was through one of his radio stations. Okay. And that was my childhood. The only time that I've worked, quote and unquote, in the railroad industry was with Gary at Trans-Texas Rail Shops. I was an electrician because of my electrical background growing up as a kid.
Right.
There's certain capabilities or skill sets that you pick up and by doing with grandparents and fathers, soldering wires together at the age of 5, being around computers in 1974.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Mind you that the IBM PC didn't come out until 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 1974, I was writing my first code.
Wow.
So, it's been an interesting life. Then I, in 1985, joined the Air Force, spent 19 out of 20 years at Brooks Air Force Base.
Oh, really? Okay.
So right here in San Antonio. Yeah. So I got to see the last days of the Southern Pacific, as well as the CIty being here in San Antonio. Back in Missouri, I got to see the MOPAC.
Yeah.
And later that became part of the Union Pacific. And prior to that, it was the Frisco. In fact, my hometown is home to the 1501 steam locomotive, which sets in Schumann Park.
Wow.
Ironically, my kindergarten class field trip was to go tour the locomotive and the passenger car behind it. And To this day, I remember that very vividly.
Yeah.
The second year that I was in the Air Force, my family got on Amtrak, rode Amtrak up to St. Louis and then down to Jeff City, Missouri. My uncle came and picked us up. My grandfather in Rolla was at one time a city councilman. And he goes, B.L., hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to go see while you're here in Rolla? And I said, I'd love to be able to take the boys to go see 1501 again. And he goes, well, let me make a phone call. So he calls up the Parks and Rec department and says, come on, let's go. We got an appointment at 1:00. So we were able to climb all over that locomotive, go through the cars.
Yeah.
And I had a VHS video camera, so I've got that archived and put on video.
Yeah.
Getting ready to convert it over to DVD.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But
got a few of those to do myself.
it's one of those loves that I've always had.
One of the things, one of the interests I had, apart from just following you guys, and this aspect of San Antonio history is pretty huge. I'm learning that more and more. But one of the reasons I wanted to get together with you guys is my dad was an engineer. He worked for the Missouri Pacific out of New Orleans for years when I was a kid. And while he's done a few things over his career, I think this has got to be the number one thing that he did, as an adult, before he retired. And it's got this huge fascination for me as well. And the question I got, and this may be a really big question, but maybe y'all have an answer. Why is this such a romantic thing for people? I don't think it's just guys. I think girls too. But why is it that people are so fascinated with the railroad, especially in this country, but I think in a lot of others as well? Do you have any?
The idea of travel. It's the traveling. It's till you take time getting there. It's not just like hopping in the vehicle, take off, or getting in an airplane and soaring above the ground from the clouds, and you can't see nothing below. It's, with the train, you're going through areas. It's like you're passing through mysteries, areas you don't know. You see something like, oh, well, that's cool. Where am I at? You don't know. And
it's an experience.
It's an experience, and that's the draw to it. And the fact is that, you get all the sounds, the rocking motion of the train. It like wants to lull you to sleep. It relaxes you. If you've ever had the opportunity to take a train ride on any of the tourist railroads, that's one of the things. You just sit back and close your eyes. It takes you away.
Especially if they still have sectional rail that they're running on.
Oh, with the clip up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is, in fact, when my family took that trip to Missouri on Amtrak, welded rail had already been put in place. So, those pieces of rail are half mile long.
Yeah.
So you don't have
that same feeling.
You don't have that melodic rhythm of the steel wheels hitting the joints and carrying that through the car, as a sound. It's not there.
Well, one of the things that I remember hearing and seeing a little bit about, I guess, online, is that San Antonio has this big history. Mm-hmm. One, because I think geographically where it is, it's kind of a distribution hub for a lot of things and has been for a long time. But also I think because of the state is so big, when railroads came this way, they were really needed, I would imagine, to transport things and people. So it's been out there for a long time. Is there anything you guys can share with us? What's your knowledge of the history of the railroad here and how it played a part in the development of the city?
Well, what we've been doing with this recent thing with that movie with the Star Film Ranch, we were discussing, the fact that the railroads is what basically built this state. I know a lot of people today is like, oh God, it's a train. It's at the crossing. It's blocking me from getting across the street to go get my latte. Yeah. The thing is though, is that without the trains, nothing would be where it is. Wagon trains are just not effective enough to move, and build a country.
Yeah.
You needed the railroad. The railroads is how everybody traveled. If you read a lot of your old novels from the 1900s, 1800s, where they talk about traveling, a lot of it is by rail because that was the way to go. You didn't have airplanes and, of course, like I said, wagons and buggies and stuff. It's just not fast enough.
Well, you look at when 794, the locomotive down at Sunset Station was built in 1916. it was rated at 55, 60 mile an hour to pull 12 to 14 heavyweight passenger cars from here to Houston. Okay.
Yeah.
If you go back to the days when the Model T was built on a good road surface,
Can imagine.
the top speed of a Model T was 21 mile an hour.
Yeah.
So that was high speed mass transit back in the day for the railroad. You know, that was it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go somewhere, that was the way to go.
And the part with San Antonio on that is that San Antonio was kind of a hub. If you look at a lot of your cattle trails that came up, they came through San Antonio. And when the railroads really got the foothold here, I mean, you got to consider at one time San Antonio had, 25 railroads?
Wow, I didn't know that.
But
Okay.
this is over a time span.
Yeah,
So the fact is you had a lot of small companies. The big ones like the Galveston, Harrisburg, and San Antonio, the San Antonio Aransas Pass, Missouri Pacific, or what it was called back then, International Great Northern, IGN, Missouri, Kansas, and Texas. Those are your major ones that were here. You had other ones, and when I say in San Antonio, is in the area. You had Fredericksburg and Northern that ran from a connection off the San Antonio Aransas Pass up at Comfort over to Fredericksburg. That was supposed to become a bigger railroad, but it never did. You had the Artesian Belt Railway. They ran from a little junction just outside of Somerset off of the Missouri Pacific. Basically, Loop 1604 is close to where it crosses the UP now. It's where it was located. It's a place called Kirk Junction. It came off there, went down through Somerset, Jourdanton, and ended up in Christine. It was supposed to go further south. It never did. You had, let's see, there was the San Antonio Valley Gulf. That was another one. San Antonio Valley Gulf, it is the line that runs south to Corpus Christi now that still connects San Antonio. It's owned by UP. A lot of these railroads all folded into either Missouri Pacific or Texas New Orleans, which ultimately became the Southern Pacific. But, as time grew, the smaller companies just couldn't compete. But that's what really helped grow the area. And a lot of people came in. This was the hub. People would come in on the smaller railroads, transfer onto the bigger ones, and go out. And ultimately, that's how the smaller railroads got absorbed by the bigger ones. But the history here, I mean, you look at how many industries we used to have. We had Alamo Iron Works back in the day.
Where the Alamo Dome sits now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If people remember that, you had the big thing back before the Alamo Dome was built about all the contaminated land and stuff they had to pull out. Yeah,
okay.
That was Alamo Iron Works.
Okay.
Of course, that was back before all the regulations and stuff existed to keep pollutants from being just dumped on the ground. Times change and, finally catch up to where they need to be.
We get smarter
as
a human race.
That's right.
But, that so much of that, though, couldn't have been done without the railroads. I mean, you can't move iron by, truck back then. You didn't have trucks like we've got today. They didn't have the capacity. You didn't have the roads. You didn't have the connections that we've got today.
Well, I think people, when I'm getting old, and and you talk to folks, most people are younger, it seems nowadays. But when you talk to folks and it's like, oh, well, the interstate, you just take the interstate. No, the interstate didn't exist, until the 50s, I guess. It was really starting to be built out.
That was when Eisenhower was in office as president. And the reason why the highway system was created was high-speed transportation of our military. So that in the event that America got into war, we had a way to transport our troops and equipment so that we could fight that war.
Well, coming out here today, one of the things I didn't realize was we got on, I guess, the highway nearby is the old Corpus Christi. And I'm assuming it goes to Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I think it's a 2-lane road, what that must have been like to go from San Antonio to Corpus Christi, it must have taken forever. Or at least it would seem like it, I guess, especially with older cars.
You also got to think about it, though, is not too many people owned cars back then, too.
Yeah, that's true.
The highways didn't have that much traffic on there because most people couldn't afford it. Most people, when you look at the early 1900s, 1800s, you pretty much stayed where you were born. And that's where you lived all your life. And that's where you passed on. I mean, the traveling that we do today was unheard of. I mean, a lot of people, they'd hear about places, and if they were lucky, they might get to go see New York or Chicago or something like that. But I mean, that would be like a once in a lifetime thing for them. Today, I mean, you can just hop on an airplane. You'll be in Chicago in a couple hours. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unbelievable. Even by rail, that was several days' journey. You know.
That reminds me of a childhood story that my mom told me about me when I was in kindergarten. My dad was from a little town called Paris, Missouri. It's up north near Mexico, Missouri. And Dad had a private plane. He was a pilot. And he used that in his business to go to these different radio stations to work on their equipment. Well, anyway, kindergarten, Monday morning, the teacher would all the time ask, well, what did you guys do over the weekend? So it came my turn, and I said, well, I flew to Paris. Well, that kind of set the teacher off a little bit. So when Mom came to pick me up after school, the teacher made a point to talk to my mom, and she goes, we need to talk about your son's lying. And Mom goes, lying? BL's got no reason to lie. Of course, I wasn't called BL then.
Yeah.
There were too many Bobs in my family, so
yeah, there you go.
That's another story. But anyway, she goes, yeah, he's been lying that you guys flew to Paris. Well, we did. And the teacher was just flabbergasted. Oh, you're lying to me too? No. We flew to Paris, Missouri, where my husband's family lives. Oh. The teacher thought Paris, France.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you know, a kid will normally only talk about their environment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's your perspective. Exactly. Yeah, on the world.
Well,
yeah, that's a good point. That illustrates it really well.
Yeah.
I mean, so what are you guys working on now? Because we have talked, before we got started, we talked a little bit about the film. Can y'all talk a little bit about what you've been involved with that? Because I think that's a great story. And then also what projects you have cooking right now.
The film part is actually kind of a unique thing that dropped in our lap. A gentleman, one heading up the film, his name is Bill Millett. His company's called Millett Films. He approached us and said he was looking to utilize us as a part of making in his film, and he was needing a location for like a rail car or something like that, so he could shoot parts of the film. And he came out here. He liked what he saw. He sat and talked with us for I don't want to say like good 5 or 6 hours. You know, and just kind of going over, trying to get a feel for us, and we were you know vice versa type thing. And he's a really great guy to work with. He's working on a film called Star Film Ranch. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the early San Antonio film history here.
No, I really don't.
Well, San Antonio could almost be called the birthplace of Hollywood.
Really?
1910, 1911, when they were doing this stuff, the guy's name was Gaston Miers. He's brother of George Miers. If you've ever seen the old silent film with the custard moon and the rocket lands in his eye, that's George Miers. These films were done. Thomas Edison brought them over here to the United States. The George Miers and Gaston were obviously French.
Yeah.
Edison brought them over here and marketed them here in the States. And so George sent his brother over here, Gaston, to do his thing. And he originally started, I believe it was Florida, or no, they started in Chicago. Mm-hmm. It was too cold. It was too wet. They went to Florida for a little bit. It was too hot, too muggy.
Yeah.
So they came to Texas. They came to San Antonio. And so they started doing their thing here. And part of the agreement was they had to produce X amount of films for Edison in a year. Well, I think they had to do like 80 films.
Oh, yeah. Back then, I can imagine.
I think he did like, what he says, 96, 88 or 96, something like that, films in a year. Wow. 1910 to 1911. Yeah. And, well, anyway, the thing, Gaston, because they were French, they didn't have the prejudice that existed here in the United States. You didn't have the racial issues there that we have here, or had at the time here. So back then, you didn't hire Mexicans, Indians, black people. If you did, they didn't get paid hardly anything. Well, Gaston didn't do things that way. He paid everybody equally. And, that was ultimately what got him driven out of San Antonio because
Really?
the people that were here at the time
Yeah.
did not like what he was doing. Now, the one, getting away from that aspect of it, but getting back to the films he did, of those films, there's only a couple that are left. And the most important one was the last one he did, was called The Immortal Alamo. And it's the only film that was actually shot at the real Alamo.
I think I saw something about this recently.
Yes.
You guys might have posted something.
Yeah, we've been posting stuff on our Facebook page and stuff.
This was basically the birthplace of the Western movie genre.
Wow.
And the reason why is because if you went to go film a Western, you did it in a corral somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you did a Western gun show type thing. And it wasn't the true to life recording of what was actually happening in the West.
It was flashy and had a lot of vaudeville.
Based on who the stars were. Yeah,
yes.
Gene Autry and all these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
They
And
were
a lot
showmen.
of that was, it just did not portray the West how
It really was.
Gaston Malaise wanted to do it. He wanted to have the feel, everything. So that's why he came here. Now, the area that was actually called Star Film Ranch no longer exists today. It's now part of a city park. But if you're standing at the Hot Wells,
know where that is,
over here
right.
off of Presa, and you look across the river, Star Film Ranch sat right on the other side of the river from Hot Wells.
Hot Wells Hotel.
Yep, across from the Hot Wells Hotel.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Millett has surmised and research on, a lot of it was the reason why Gaston positioned himself there was you had a lot of influential people went to Hot Wells, so you had a lot of money that was there.
You get support for the projects,
Right.
and
And the tracks are still there today.
Yes,
really.
Yeah, the main line that actually comes right past here is the tracks that go past Hot Wells.
Okay.
Yes. And Hot Wells incidentally had some big name people there, like Mr. Harriman. E.H. Harriman spent, I think they said, 2 weeks here in San Antonio. And when you start talking about the railroad barons and the amount of money they throw around, he had his own train.
Oh, yeah.
He had his own train. Not only that, because he was going to be here for 2 weeks, he had a siding put in on a railroad that wasn't even his own, just so he could park his train at the Hot Wells. That's what you call money.
Yeah.
But
That's a lifestyle there.
Yeah,
boy.
yeah, and I mean, it's amazing. That again, this
It
is
was
railroad.
like a corporate jet. I mean, it had all the comforts of home and was bigger than a jet, so it was home essentially.
Well, see, that's when those folks that had money, like Mr. Harriman, that's when the concept of the palace car came into existence. That's like the Alamo behind us here.
Mm-hmm.
The Alamo rail car was a railroad presidential car that was set up by the Galveston, Harrisburg, and San Antonio Railroad.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Ironically, we didn't name the car that. People think that, you guys live in San Antonio. You named it that.
Yeah.
No.
It goes along with living here, right?
The railroad actually named that car the Alamo. We just had the pleasure of bringing the Alamo
And there was that thing.
back to the Alamo
I mean,
City.
you think about a lot of public transit. Every bus has a number and all that stuff, but rail cars didn't. They had names. I mean,
it does have a number.
It has both.
Some did. Some just went with names. Some actually had a number. I think ultimately they started going to just numbers because, if you interchange
So many of them,
across,
maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to end up with conflicting names on two different railroads. You may have one car called, the Sunflower on the Southern Railroad, and then you got another one called the Sunflower on the Wabash Railroad.
That's true.
What happens if you get two Sunflowers on the same train?
Yeah,
It's going to be a
that's
problem.
true.
So they ended up having, you got the numbers and stuff. But to move into what he was talking about with the Alamo, I mean, the Alamo itself is built 1926. It's actually our very first passenger car that we actually had donated to us that we've moved. We had one other car donated to us. We just haven't moved it yet prior to the Alamo. Now, since the Alamo, we got this back in, 2017? They moved it over here February of 2018. It cost us a pretty penny, a lot more than we were expecting. We were, initially quoted $30,000 for the move. But thanks to good old Hurricane Harvey in Houston, Texas, it saturated the ground so bad over there, it made it near to impossible for us to get the car out of where it was. Instead of taking a week, it took a month.
Wow.
And that drove up the cost. And so we're still paying the mover, and coming up with the funds to pay the mover has been hard because, today, people don't donate like they used to. You used to be able to go up and say, hey, we got a project we're working on. Would you be willing to? Oh, yeah, sure, I'll give some money. Now you go up to people and say, hey, we got a project we want to work on. And they're like, oh, well, okay, well, I can't help you, but good luck,
Well, the other thing, too, maybe is that it's here now. So it's sort of like, what am I donating to? Oh, it's already done.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have the excitement of seeing it happen. But yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. But we got the car here. We built the track. We did all that stuff. It's been sitting here, and we're slowly working on doing the restoration on it. As of June 20th, we received our second car, and that one's called the Dixie, and it sits right down.
Third car.
Well, I'm saying second car like that. Okay. We have the other car, the original one that I mentioned earlier. It's a Missouri Pacific International Great Northern RPO car. So that would be interest to your dad on that one. So, the fact that it's a Mopat car, and we was like, hey, this would be really cool. RPO, early way of hauling postal around, prior to the mail trucks. Now you got mail cars. So we got that car donated to us, and it's down in Robstown. We just got to get it moved up here. It's going to need a lot of work, but fortunately, it's not like the Alamo, which has got a very elaborate interior, which after we're done here, I'm sure you're going to want to see. Yeah,
we got to check it out. Yeah.
But the Dixie is different from the Alamo. The Alamo is what they consider to be a presidential rail car, meaning it's very, very posh inside for the time. The walls are Cuban mahogany. It had a very nice carpet. There's brass all over the place in there. Beautiful interior. It's got some water damage because the car sat for a very long time, not getting any attention, no maintenance. So
vegetation growing outside of it.
The trees that were growing around it, basically, you get the electrolytic reaction with the decay of the leaves and stuff like that. Right. It starts to eat away the metal. And we've got some areas where it's pretty eaten away on the back steps back there. So that's all going to have to be cut off and replaced. So that's all going to take money. The other car is basically like a superintendent's car, the Dixie. It's not as elaborate inside. It's mostly metal walls. It has some wood trim on it, but it's not fancy wood. It's all painted. This one, the Alamo, is stained or lacquered. Not stained. Is lacquered.
Stained and lacquered.
Well, no, they didn't stain that. That's all lacquer.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, that's straight up mahogany. Wow. But it's all lacquered. But the Dixie is all painted, and majority, like I said, is wood. The beauty of when we got the Alamo was there were certain parts of the car that the people that owned the car originally and gave it to us, they didn't have access to. So one of the original berths had never been opened since the railroad had it. They didn't have the berth key for it. When we got the car, they didn't know what it was.
Okay.
And all they, there's just a little circular button up there that's a depression. Well, you got to have the key. It's like a socket that sits in there. You turn it, and it undoes the latches, and you pull the berth down. And they didn't even know it existed. When we opened it up, it hadn't been opened since it worked for the railroad.
By the way, for those that don't know what a berth is, it's basically a bunk bed, if you will, the upper level of the bunk bed.
So it just kind of folds up and locks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea was back in the days, like when you weren't using the bed, the seat or the bed down below folded back into seats. So then you could ride underneath the upper berth, sitting basically where the lower bed would be.
And not worry about having to bump your head when you got up.
If you look at if you ever get a chance of ever seeing the old Pullman sleeper cars, they were all done that way. You had a berth on top and the bed down below. But if you were riding with somebody, y'all shared the seat down below, which was the bed, and which folded into a bed, which is a very ingenious idea to, be able to carry enough people and save space on the beds. So, the interior of the car, they hadn't opened some of the cabinets, and we got inside one of the cabinet inside the secretary's room was a treasure trove, of Southern Pacific maps, timetables, union agreements.
Wow, yeah, that's some pretty historic stuff.
Yeah, there's like their healthcare plan, the roster of all the phone numbers, who to contact into different yards, all the railroad radio frequencies for particular areas. There was a lot of the stationery, business cards for different railroad employees. The last gentleman that really was on the car, his name was Don R. Kirk. He was vice president of the Cotton Belt and Southern Pacific Railroad of this area.
Okay.
We've got his cards for it, and it has the Cotton Belt logo and the Southern Pacific logo, and it says Vice President Cotton Belt Railway.
Going back to the maps that were in the car, one of the maps that we found was a map of San Antonio in 1954, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about the transportation roadways of San Antonio, that was before 281 leaving from downtown going out to where the airport was created.
Yeah.
That was before that was built, as well as I-10 and Loop 410.
And 37
and
through
37
downtown.
Through downtown were created.
Yeah. Wow.
And, this is just multiple things in there. I mean, there's some maps from the 70s, old gas station Gulf, Phillips 66, stuff that's just not around anymore. I mean, it's not really significant to railroading, but it's the fact that these are names that were around that are mostly gone. You can still find a couple of those gas stations here and there. They've tried to make a resurgence, but it's just not worked out.
So when was the last time the car was actually used for its purpose?
The car had been basically pulled from service in about 76.
Okay.
That's pretty much where all the books and everything that were in there stopped date-wise, because each one was dated and labeled for the car. The car was officially retired in 1980. Okay. And it was moved to the gentleman that bought the car. His name was Jamie Bray. He was county commissioner over there in Houston. He moved the car out to his home just outside of Pasadena, and that's where it sat. That's where we moved it from.
Yeah, okay.
But it sat there for a long time in the yard, and the gentleman I had mentioned before, Trans-Texas Rail, small world, he worked for the Southern Pacific at the time. He's the one that put the new wheels on it.
Oh, okay.
They had the new wheels put on it in the 80s before the car was sold. So if you go out there now and you go look at the wheels, and what they call meat, it's the thickness on the rim. Those are brand new wheels. There's no use on them. If there is any use, it's very, very minimal.
And 10, 12 miles.
Yeah. So, I mean, because Mr. Schroeder, he actually owns the property behind us here at the museum. He came over when we brought the car in, and he kind of got a little emotional about it because he remembered when he worked for the Southern Pacific, before he did the wheels in Houston, he used to dine with the porter on the car when car was parked in front of Sunset Station downtown San Antonio. So it's funny how everything comes back around.
It's a small world, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And talking Sunset Station, that's our other project, is the SP 794. And that's sitting basically where that car would have been parked down at Sunset Station. The SP 794, it's one of 4 of the remaining Mikados type steam locomotives, which is a 282 wheel arrangement. Its sisters is the 771 up in Grapevine, Texas, came from Victoria. The 745, which is over in New Orleans, and that's the only one that's running.
Where's that one located?
I don't know exactly. I know they've been running off the New Orleans public belt. We've been talking with their guys. They're supposed to be coming over here later this year.
Check that out.
Yeah. They're supposed to be coming over here later this year because their engine, when they got it, was missing a lot of parts out of the cab, so they had to kind of pseudo-fabricate their own to replace them. They want to come over and take pictures of what we've got.
See what they really were and what
exactly. And what they can do to reproduce them.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm talking to them because we've got parts missing out of ours for the air brake control stand. So I was like, hey, you help us out, we help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're trying to work together kind of like a little,
common cause.
Deal working between the two groups. So, but anyway, the other engine is the 786. That's up in Austin, and it's the one that's the closest to San Antonio. 786 was actually the first one to get rebuilt and running, and that was back in the early 90s. It ran all the way up to, I want to say, like 2001, 2002, when they did an inspection on it and found a crack in the steam chest.
Oh.
Yeah, the steam chest is the part where you hold your valves and your pistons, and it's your, basically your major part of that locomotive.
Yeah.
Well, they found an internal crack, and that meant that crack had been there for a long time, but it finally surfaced to the outside where it could be seen noticeably. So that sidelined the engine. Now, they got tons of money set aside to do what they had to do. I think they've spent over $3 million on the engine so far.
Really?
But a lot of it because they had to cast a whole new steam chest part. Now, fortunately, the steam chest comes in 2 pieces, so they only had to replace one side. But it was
a
the
large piece of
yeah,
metal.
Yeah, I would think so.
It was the first steam locomotive component of that size cast in the United States in over 50 years at that time when they did it. There's now since been others done, but it was kind of one of those things. They really kind of set a bit of a precedence on things. Most people hadn't, back in the day, if you found something like that, well, we're sidelined, we're done.
Yeah, it's over.
So people would just give up and go on to the next locomotive. But, when it's a labor of love working on these things. You're not just going to sideline it just because,
Well, and that brings up a good point. You guys are obviously all working here making huge bucks doing this, right?
Yeah,
You're funny.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm assuming this is all volunteer.
Are you a
all
part-time
volunteer.
comedian?
Yes, I am. I need to be. I need to practice more, though. But no, I mean, that's what I understood. Is this all volunteers?
Yeah,
that
we're
do
all
this, right?
volunteers. We do this because we enjoy this. We love what we do.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of guys, like one of our newest guys, he loves to tinker, and so this is something that he's attracted to. He's always liked trains, but he goes more beyond just the trains. He likes to work on getting the tools working. We've got a air compressor out here. We've got a high rail truck that was donated to us. And a high rail, basically, it's a big, large truck that has rail wheels that you can put it on the track and drive down the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not on the tracks, you can drive on the road. So that was donated to us. We just got to get it down here from Colorado. But, these are people like doing these little things. You got some people that just like doing the history aspect of things. So it attracts a whole different group of people of different things. Because you got some people, they just have no interest in doing the actual physical restoration, but they'll sit there and they'll do all the research for you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
those are
Find what you need or find
Exactly.
people that may know what you need. Yeah.
And that's what they like doing. They're attracted to that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that you look at the skill sets that each one of our members brings. They're totally different, but yet we can, and believe me, we're all the time learning new things to do or how to do things just by being around each other. So as a 501c3 not-for-profit educational organization, we're learning lots of stuff, even from our own members.
Well, to say, you're learning as well as teaching the public. That's
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah.
And actually, it's a kind of a good example of that is one of our younger members. Actually, he's probably, he's not the youngest, but he's one of our younger members that's more active and involved. He's learning a lot of stuff because he's never done it before. We got guys out here that know how to weld. So he's kind of learning how to weld. He's learning mechanical aptitudes and stuff like that, stuff he's never done before, he's never had the opportunity for. So it fulfills the educational aspect of things for people that are involved. Is if you don't know how to do something and you want to learn it, you just come out here while we're working and you'll pick it up. Or somebody will say, hey, you want to learn how to do this? We'll show you.
That whole self-sufficiency thing is not that common right nowadays. So
No, it's not.
and just being willing to learn and to do that is a pretty cool opportunity. Whether you're into this or not, the skill set can be transferred to a lot of different things. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the other thing is that when you're working on an older piece of equipment, for instance, like when we're down there working on 794 downtown, and we are repairing a part on it, it's amazing how in taking that part and looking at it as to how the railroad manufactured or maintained or preserved that part on that locomotive. And so you get to see how things were done in the past instead of just right now.
They were rather meticulous on how they marked their stuff. We could take you down there right now and show you a bunch of the parts on the engine and say, well, see, this is from the right side and left side because everything on there is stamped. It'll say 794 right. It'll say R-S or R/SF right side front 794. And we've got like the drivers. They've got each one of those is stamped 794 driver. Basically, say like driver number 4. And then we've got one on there that's from another locomotive. And because it's got its number stamped on there, we've found multiple parts off other engines, 742, 761, 763. We actually have a part from, I believe, 745. There's a lots of different numbers on there. And in some of them, we're still finding them. You know, you'll look underneath something we haven't looked under. Like this happened, this past Christmas to me. I'm running wires for the Christmas lights we light it up every year. And I just happen to look up above me on one of the parts that's above me, and there's a number I'd never seen before. I'm like, oh, hey, guys, check this out. You know, it's exciting to find those things.
I was saying that's going to lead to, okay, now we got to find out where this came from.
Right.
What's the story of that whole thing? Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest mysteries that hit us on the 794. And I'll go back to when we very first started working on the engine. We heard the engine had been rebuilt 22 weeks before being retired. And we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why are they going to rebuild an engine 22 weeks before retirement? Well, we don't know the reasons why it happened, but it did happen. Here's why we know. I was doing research on the engine, and back when we first started working on it and cleaning it and checking around on it, we had taken the boiler steam dome cover off. Now, this is just the decorative cover that goes on the outside of the actual steam dome. We took the cover off, and under there was a 5-digit number. And we're like, oh, well, this is interesting. One of our guys is like, oh, I know what this is. This is a boiler number. This is the number for the boiler. So we looked it up against the engine's boiler number. Now, the engine was built by Brooks Alco out of Dunkirk, New York. The boiler number on there was not a Brooks Alco number. It was a Baldwin number.
Oh, okay. Yeah, people have heard of that. I'm
right.
sure. Yeah,
Baldwin Locomotive Works.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have anything to research against it or anything like that. Skip ahead about 10 years, we find a book called the Southern Pacific Railroad Locomotive Cyclopedia, Steam Locomotive Cyclopedia. It has every steam locomotive the Southern Pacific had from day one to the last days they had steam. 794 is listed in there. And sure enough, there's our boiler number for 794. That number that's on there is not the same number. So I started thumbing through there going, okay, well, let me see what other numbers are on here. And I started going on, and then I find the first 2 digits of that number listed on some of the other engines. I went, oh, let me look. So I started going down, and sure enough, the same boiler number is in there for the SP 763. The 763 was retired in 1956, May of 1956. It was scrapped then. Now, this is just a guess on my part because I have nothing to really back it up other than the people saying that it had been rebuilt 22 weeks before retirement. When we had Mr. Scott Lindsay from Steam Operations Corporation down here to look at the 794 to evaluate it, see what condition it was in for rebuild, he was blown away by the engine. One of our members, he rigged up basically a camera system that we slid down the boiler inspection ports.
Oh, wow.
So we actually put a camera inside the boiler itself. And we ran it across the top of the firebox cover on the inside, the crown sheet. And you can see all the stay bolts going between the top of the crown sheet to the outside boiler sheet. And the part that Scott was so, surprised by, there was no erosion on the stay bolts. They looked like fresh bolt threads. And they were perfectly sharp. They looked great. There was hardly any calcium buildup anywhere. And like I said, there was no erosion on the metal.
Yeah.
There was very little scale buildup on the inside of the boiler.
Yeah, what you would expect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why he was going, you guys have got a great boiler. So which made us very, happy to hear and also excited because that might very well mean it's not going to cost that much to do the rebuild on the engine.
Yeah.
Which for us is great. But running that thing down there, you can see the flue tubes were in great shape. The all that stuff was in there. And there's the number BL's pulling up on his phone.
Yeah, that's on Facebook, by the way.
Yes.
So okay, cool. Oh, yeah, we're going to link all that up. That's for sure.
If you do a search on Facebook of SP794, you will find the friends of the SP794. If you go look in the photos, you'll see a lot of the photos that we've taken of different parts of the locomotive that we have exposed, if you will. And one of them is the boiler itself.
That's pretty cool.
But we had like the valve cages off, the valve covers, and look inside the cages in there. You can still see the machining marks. I mean, it literally has very little use. And the stories we've been told, and this is why I say we can't verify it because there's nothing written that we can refer back to, is that the 794 had been rebuilt 22 weeks before retirement. With me looking up that number against the 763, the 763 was scrapped in May of 56. Well, if you go back 22 weeks, that would mean the boiler was put on 794 somewhere around July, August, which would make sense at 22 weeks. So what we were kind of surmising is maybe, they were trying to keep certain engines running that were in better shape than others. So what they did is, like in the case of 763, it may have been just really, really ragged out, but the boiler was good.
Yeah.
So they took the boiler off of it, finished, maybe cleaned it up, rebuilt it or something, and then stuck it on 794. And that's how 794 ended up with, because most of the parts are all interchangeable. They're very similar locomotives. But, this is where, again, these multiple engine numbers are coming up, because as they were retiring steam locomotives, now you ended up with surplus parts. Oh, this part's broken or it's worn out. Well, go grab one from the pile over there and stick it on.
Exactly.
So that's what, we kind of guess is what happened here. A lot of parts ended up on there from other engines being scrapped.
It's kind of funny when you draw parallels of how the railroad was so good at reutilizing parts from other locomotives and putting them on locomotives to get them running again. It's interesting because if you look at the trucking industry, you look at the shipping industry, you look at the military, they do that all the time. I know in the Air Force, when you have an airframe that's down because of the fact that you've got a rudder that needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
What do? You go get a rudder from that same model of plane and you put it on there, and then you've got an airworthy plane again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you extended the life of these things, and they needed it because it was more cost efficient. Yeah.
Look at how long the B-52 has been flying. Over 55 years.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, though. The history of all this stuff is amazing to me. You can dig down forever, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
we can talk forever on it.
Yeah, keep going. Well, what we need to do is to do this again. I'd love to get my dad in to visit and bring him down and, just chat a little bit, too, about some of the stuff. He was doing this back in the 70s, and, it was a few years back, but he tells some great stories, and I'm sure y'all know a lot of the same stuff that I don't. I'll just sit here and marvel, I guess. But no, this has been a lot of fun. So how do people find you guys? How do they help you with the projects if they want to volunteer or they want to donate? What's the best way?
You can get to us either through Facebook, which is SARHM, San Antonio Railroad Heritage Museum, or go to our website, which is sarhm.org. We've got deal on there if you want to become a volunteer, basically, become a member so you're covered by the insurance type thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to work out a deal with the insurance company on how to exactly handle just straight up volunteers. People just want to volunteer to come out and do something.
Out for a Saturday or something.
You don't necessarily want to become a member, but you want to just at least help out with something. So we're trying to work that out with the insurance company, right now, so we can get something going on that. But we've got that on the website. You can download the membership. We only do our membership for singles, $35 a year, families, $50. If you're a student interested in it, we have a student membership, that's on there. We've, what was the other one we've got on there? I can't remember. There's one more. I don't remember what it's.
Student, sponsored child.
So that's a sponsored. So, if you've got you're a grandfather and you got a grandson that's interested in it, the grandfather can sponsor the child type situation. So that way it doesn't necessarily have to be a family. But that's, we got that on there. Again, you can follow us on Facebook. We've got the SARHM. We got the SP794 on Facebook. Now, the location we're in, because we haven't talked about this, is
that's right,
the Elmendorf Heritage and Railroad Museum. Now, this Elmendorf Heritage and Railroad Museum is a division of the San Antonio Railroad Heritage Museum.
Okay.
Now, this goes into what we hadn't talked about, is the ultimate goals of what we're trying to do. The reason why we've got this as a satellite location, one, we don't have the main location yet. We're trying to find a spot that's close to the rails, because I don't want us to be isolated. Because isolation means lots of money to get equipment in
and out. Exactly.
So,
you can't use it. It's just there for
it's just there,
display.
and
that's right.
So what we're looking at was acquiring the rail line that's here, a portion of it, from just south of Elmendorf, a little community down here called Saspamco, which I will get to the little uniqueness of that name in a minute. From Saspamco all the way to Kennedy. And the reason, as far as Kennedy, Texas, Kennedy was a kind of like a division point or a junction point. At Kennedy, the track split in two directions. One went off towards Runge, Cuero up to Yoakum, Texas, where it split again to Waco and Houston. And then the other one at Kennedy went south down to Corpus Christi. And it actually split again before getting to Corpus down in a little town of, I'll think of it here in a second, south of Sinton. Skidmore. A little place called Skidmore. Back in the railroad days, it was basically a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
But it's at Skidmore, you continued on down to Corpus Christi, Aransas Pass, or you turned and you went down to Alice, Texas, and ultimately ended up down in McAllen.
Okay.
The reason for Kennedy is because that junction point, they have what they call a Y there. And a Y gives you the ability to turn a locomotive around without having to actually have a turntable. So you could bring the train in on one track, cut the engine away while everybody's getting off, turn the engine and come back and hook up to the train. That was the idea, as people would get off. Kennedy's got a very nice little downtown. I don't know if you've never been there or not.
No, never been there.
It's set. It's a ripe location for a very good tourist type setting. They got a nice little downtown right off of where the tracks were. When I went down there and talked with the Chamber of Commerce down there, there was some interesting things I didn't know. Did you know Kennedy was known as Six Shooter Junction? It was one of the most deadliest cities in the state of Texas back in the early days. Yes.
Wow.
It kind of got its name for that. The other thing Kennedy's known for is the Bluebonnet Festival.
Okay.
And that happens in the spring,
heard
of course.
That.
Yeah, so it's like, that'd be kind of cool. People can ride the train down there, and of course you're going to have fields along the tracks that probably have bluebonnets in them.
Oh, yeah.
So your people that are into going out and looking to flowers, and I mean, spring's a beautiful time of the year anyway, so, that's the best time to ride a train, spring and fall. Because fall's when colors start happening because your leaves are changing, it's coming up for winter. So those are the beautiful times to be on the train is spring and fall. So that would be a really great time. And then summertime, you get people just want to ride a train. Mm-hmm. Of course, we all know kids love to ride a train.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So, but anyway, the idea for what we're doing here with Elmendorf was each town that was along the way has a depot. Floresville, they went and got their depot back. They found it on a ranch. They moved it back. It's basically in the same exact location where the depot was back when it was there.
Ironically, we found a community that is proud of their railroading history and wants to restore it.
There you go.
And they did a very nice job because the way it looks now is not how it showed up when they got it. It didn't have its little ticket booth or any of that, or not the ticket booth, but the little station agent's window that kind of sticks out from the building. None of that was there. It was all gone. They put it all back. The next town down is Poth. Their depot was never torn down, never moved. It's a stucco building. Okay. Beautiful building, but it's right on the same spot where it's always been. And then, of course, you got down further. Fall City doesn't have its depot anymore. Karn City, Kennedy. The Kennedy depot was a very big depot. The depot was shared with a hotel. So it was unique on its own right. Yeah, so there's no real pictures of that depot. So kind of what we were planning on is when we got to Kennedy, what we would do at Kennedy is build a replica of the San Antonio Aransas Pass Station. It was in San Antonio. And that one was a 2-story building. It had the offices up above, and it had your stationary down below. But what we do is the whole part of the museum type situation. But it's like we're doing here in Elmendorf. We don't just have the railroad here. We have the community aspect. Elmendorf, not too people know, had pottery was the big thing here. Pottery and brick was the two major commodities that came out of Elmendorf. In fact, the building we're sitting in right now is the original offices for the Dickey Clay Company or Dickey Brick Company.
Oh, okay.
This building was built in 1953. It was retired, or the plant was shut down. I believe he said the gentleman that we spoke to was in 83. His name is Howard Rogers. He was the plant manager for this location.
Okay.
And he had said he started here, I believe it was 54 year after this office was built. But he ran this plant. He was telling us all the different stuff was out here, all the different brick. We actually have some of the brick in there in the museum area on the other side over here. A lot of it was done extrusion brick, which is not very common.
Yeah.
You think brick, it's all the little, nice little forms and stuff like that. No, this was extruded. They poured the clay in, and pushed it out. And you can see by looking at the brick, you can see the streaks in it where like the little pieces of stones that were in with there would slide through it. So you get these little slide marks.
Think of it like
there.
making pasta through one of these presses,
or if you try to take Play-Doh and shove it through something.
Oh, yeah,
like
the Play-Doh
kids
machine.
You shove it through.
Yeah.
Well, you get little pieces a little bit hard or dry, something like that, and it kind of rolls and leaves that little streak. It has that same look to it.
Wow.
And but Mr. Howard Rogers is working on a book for all the different the brick manufacturers, and he gave us a lot of information on what happened here, what was done here, and that's what we're doing because the community was influenced by the railroad, but the railroad was also benefited by going through these communities because industries popped up. This brick company was handled by rail. In fact, right in front over here along the side of the little dirt road that's in front of us, there used to be a spur that went to the property behind us, which is the brick plant.
Oh, okay.
They used to load boxcars here. And there's evidence of that. You go to a site called historicalaerials.com, and it's got a picture from 1955, 56. And you can see, it's kind of grainy, but you can see the little boxcars along the track in the picture. So it's like, that's pretty cool. And you can see the layout of the brick plant. But what we're looking at doing is like what we've done here in Elmendorf, because we're showcasing the brick, the pottery, stuff like that, the community, the history of the community, families that were here, unique stuff, so that people that are riding the train can come down, get off, because our ultimate goal is we're going to rebuild the old station here. It was a wood station. It disappeared sometime in the early 50s. We had been told about 54, 55, but that historical aerials, I believe it's 54 actually.
Okay.
We were told 55 is when it disappeared. It's not even there in 54. So it was sometime prior to 54 because there's not even any evidence that the building was there.
Yeah, you can't see the outline.
Yeah, there's no outline. It doesn't look like it was just recently torn down from when the photo was taken. So it was gone for at least a year. So that it's some of the numbers and stuff because, I mean, where are you going to find the old records for these companies? These are companies. San Antoni Aransas Pass went out of business in 1955. Or no, 1925. I'm sorry. 25 went out of business. So.
Yeah, where are you going to find it?
Exactly.
If it's not on the web now, it never will be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why when we come up with information, stuff like that, we're trying to get everything together. We're going to start putting stuff on our website that has all this obscure, unique little history tidbits that just aren't out there. You know, because if I'm having a hard time finding it, that means if anybody else is interested in it, they're going to have a hard time finding it. Well, I want to be able to have people be able to find the information that I've been looking for. So I'm sure I'm not the only person looking for the information.
So when we've been to the museum in New Braunfels, we've been to various different places, and they have a location, at least to my knowledge. But what you're talking about doing is multiple locations,
exactly,
and the ability to travel between them.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a different concept to what I was saying.
What we're looking at is a linear museum, essentially. It's more than just a location where it's stagnant. I call it stagnant. You walk in, everything's there. You look around, you leave. You know, we're looking at the fact is it's more interactive. You get on the train, you ride to the location, you get off, take maybe 30 minutes, an hour. Walk around, learn the history of the community, get back on the train, go to the next town. And so you get that feel of the travel and what it was like to get on and off of a train.
I was going to say that would be part of it. It's not just where you're going. It's the actual experience we talked about when we first got started.
You know, the things you go through is, you know, what's the saying? It's not the trip, or what is that whole saying about traveling? It's not the destination, it's about the trip or the process of getting there. I don't know what it is, but you know, that's kind of what we're doing is the fact is you're going to hit each one of these little communities. So it's like you have the Elmendorf Heritage Railroad Museum. You'll have the Floresville Heritage and Railroad Museum, the Poth Heritage and Railroad Museum. And the reason why we're putting Heritage and Railroad Museum, the railroad is part of it, but we want to focus on the history of the community.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Because if you've got people from out of state that don't know anything about the community, this is the way to teach people. You know, the railroad's just a part of it. We're what's bringing you there. That's what helped grow these towns.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I believe that there's going to be some people riding our train that they stop at one community and they may, hey, you know, this is interesting. I want to stay here, and they'll miss the train.
The rest of the way. But catch it on the return. And then they'll ride it again.
Yeah.
But instead of stopping at that first town, they'll go to the next town and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it gives the versatility diving into that community's heritage more so than just that 30, 45-minute window.
You know, I've never, and we've talked about, the family has talked about this, I don't know how many times. We've never done Amtrak.
You need to.
And I've always wanted to. And, you know, you can go from New Orleans. Our big thing was, because we grew up in New Orleans, I grew up in New Orleans, was, you know, going from New Orleans to California. You know, the great, you know, I'm going across, that's not across the Rockies and all that, but hey, I'm going to go this other thing. But it seems like, you know, okay, well, I look at what's going on with Amtrak these days, or at least in the last several decades, and it's like, do I really want to do this? Because it doesn't seem like it was back in the day when it was, these things were just so common and it was the way to get around. But I think if you have that history and you have that way, that the trip, then it becomes, you know, the destination in a way. Our whole thing of going is sort of like, I want to take the train to experience the train and to get there. But exactly. I can tell you, as many times as we've talked about it, I've never said, hey, what are the towns in between here and there that we would stop and visit? It never even crossed my mind. Yeah. So I think that's a cool concept. Yeah, it really is.
You know, beyond that, you know, you'd have, and what we're looking at is going to be more than one train running at a time. So you'd have the train, basically we'd consider the educational train, where it stops to hit every town. Then you have the one, like, people that just really want to basically get the train ride. They're just there for that. They would it would leave after that train and go straight to Kennedy. And so here, now you get another little facet of things that most tourist railroads don't have, is that as you got the one train progressing, another one passes it. So then people have the opportunity, if you've got multiple steam locomotives running, your steam engine sitting there at the station idling essentially, and here you have one going by at 30, 45 miles an hour past you. You know, the photo opportunities, I mean, just think about it. You go out there with a black and white camera, if you got it framed right, nobody will know the difference between if it was old or now. And to be able to do some really good photography on stuff like that.
Well, one of the things, we're big YouTube watchers because we don't have cable, like I guess a lot of people these days. But there's some great channels.
Seems to be the way of the culture.
There's some great channels out there that, you know, Virtual Rail Fan, I think, is one of them. You know, and you could just sit there and they've got a camera set up somewhere and you just watch what happens. And there's some beautiful, beautiful stuff out there that people do. And that's a great opportunity as well. And so many people are into it now because the technology is so accessible to do video, to do photos.
And now with the drones and stuff out there, it can give you a whole new aspect of viewing that you couldn't get before.
It's interesting. We've been watching Ken Patterson's What's Neat This Week.
Okay.
And it's pretty much weekly that he will get a section of drone footage that a guy out in California has been recording. And basically the concept is, in doing that, is so that you can see the landscape for modeling purposes and the equipment being used in that area to give you a feel as to, if you're a modeler, what you need to do in order to make your layout look more natural.
And that's the goal,
And that's the goal, exactly.
You know, you reminded me of something because, growing up, we had model railroads. We had I guess it was the HO scale is the most common, probably. And I remember, this is one of the stories. My dad was probably out on a trip. He was at work. And I remember wanting to, and I was probably maybe 5 or something. I don't know. Maybe I was younger. But I wanted to have it snow on this rail thing. And my brother must have been just born. So I covered the thing in baby powder, which my dad probably wasn't thrilled with. But I remember to this day. So that's one of those memories. It's like, okay, I wish it. But we had a trundle bed, and he had a small layout that was underneath on the trundle. So you could just pull it out, hook it up, you know. So I hadn't thought of that in I don't know how long. So when you talked about that aerial view and the realistic, that probably wasn't the way to do it. But there are still so many people into that. I remember we had a neighbor down the street that he actually cut out a wall between 2 bedrooms, so he had more space in his house to run this thing through. It's pretty neat.
When we were working, or when we were doing the concept of the museum, Gary and I used to go over to a friend's house that lived over on the southwest side of town. And his daughter had moved out. He's a retired Air Force senior master sergeant.
I believe so,
Yeah. Well, anyway, he had been planning his layout, his dream layout, for 20 years. And so he finally got to build it.
Wow.
After his daughter left, he built a 40 by 35 foot.
The building on the back of the house was 30 by 35.
30 by 35.
And then ran a 40-foot extension down the side of the house after that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
But he knocked the wall, the exterior wall of his daughter's bedroom out. So it opened up into this great big huge room.
Yeah.
And he had a layout that would, you could probably run 25, 30 trains on it at one time.
Oh my gosh.
And
I've never seen anything like that.
It was a phenomenal layout. But the thing is that Gary would run a yard. I would go run another yard. And then you'd have people that would run mainline trains, and they would take it and have to drop off cars. You know, we were into the operations.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So we had a computer system that was in the dispatcher's office, another complete room. And I helped to build this computer system with another guy, and it had 8 monitors on it.
Jeez.
And then we had put up web cameras that you could watch the trains anywhere in the layout from.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from the Thomas the Tank Engine, little oval, that you buy. But that's what gets people started.
That we enjoyed doing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Basically, every week we were over there running trains. So,
and that's the beauty of, you mentioned Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
Thomas the Tank Engine, a lot of people kind of look at it and go, that's stupid. No, I look at it and go, that's great. For one reason, it gets kids to like trains, because I'm 38. All right, there's not many younger generations coming up that are really into it. Most of them are so transfixed on their phones, it's unreal.
They even have lived with trains.
Yeah,
you
get a little kid. This is our goal for the steam engine. Is most. I'll go further than say most. 99.9% of your kids today have never seen an operating steam engine. Never.
What's on top of the bookcase?
A
caboose, a G-scale caboose.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness. We're looking at photos here, guys.
99% of your kids today have no idea what an operating steam engine looks like, sounds like, smells like. I got to see my first steam locomotive when the Union Pacific brought down the Challenger. It's the 3985. It's currently down right now, but that engine came down, I want to say it's like 91 or 92. It was here in San Antonio. I got to see it in person, but they wouldn't let you get up close to it. But the fact is, just this giant locomotive sitting there, the sounds,
people
noise.
Don't picture the scale either,
right?
Of
and
the
you
size
get the
of these
smells.
things.
We get all the hot oils, and then the hot water that's sitting there, and you get the steam, and the steam's got the oil atomized into it, so it has a unique smell.
Yeah.
The opportunity where I got to stand next to a, fully fired, just sitting there, steam locomotives up in Austin when they were running their engine. And I remember standing there, and it always brings back the saying they called the steam locomotive the Iron Horse.
Mm-hmm. And
that experience, standing next to the engine while it was just sitting there, idling, if you will.
Percolating.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yes, literally. Yeah.
You've got all the sounds. You can hear the metal. It makes groaning sounds because you got expansion, contraction. Mm-hmm. You got the steam, the hissing, little areas where some steam or air might be escaping from fittings that aren't quite all the way tightened down or something. You got a lot of valves and stuff on there, and then you get the smell of the hot
like it's
oil.
Alive. Yeah,
because you got to lubricate everything, so you got oil on there, and all these. It is an experience that is very just engaging because it's so much to see, hear, and feel. Because you get that, you're standing next to a boiler, you get that heat radiating off of there. And, you got to think, there's insulation against that boiler retaining the majority of that heat. And you're still feeling the radiating heat. Yeah. Some of these boilers are running at 200 PSI, even more. I think ours is what?
Ours should be running 794. Is actually owned by the city of San Antonio, by the way.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It, I believe, is 200 and
250.
No, I think it's 225. the terminology that I think best describes what you were describing, Gary, about being up close to an operating steam locomotive and hearing all the creaking and moaning was best described by the president of the Durango-Silverton Railroad on a video that I have. He said that he loved going into the roundhouse where they had 2 or 3 of these beasts percolating. And he said it was like going into a dragon's lair because of the fact that you have all this fire, you have all the steam, the hissing, and to me, that when he said that, it's like, that fits big time.
Well, one of the things that, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but we were talking about Thomas the Tank and my nephews. I have 5 nephews at my brother's boys, and 2 others from my wife's brother. But the youngest ones are huge into trains. They carry them around with them, I mean, just that kind of thing. But one of the things you made me think of was our family is big Disney fans. And, when you go to Disney World or Disneyland, at least most of the Disney parks, the older ones anyway, maybe the new ones aren't the same, but they've got that train going around.
Right.
And I think there's probably more people have ridden those than probably any others. But it's still a fascinating thing. And all it does is go around in a circle. But it's exciting to go and to see and to talk to the people that are running them and to, just to be kind of there. The other one that made me think about was, and I don't know much about it, but it's a big one, in Dollywood in the Smokies.
Yes.
I mean, this is a pretty big size locomotive, but I remember riding it multiple times, and it's probably been 5 or 8 years now, maybe more than that. But you get off and you've got the cinders on your clothes and you got, and it's sort of like, okay, this is a real thing. This is not a ride. This is not a theme park. So it's an experience you have to actually have to know and to, and then you kind of go, okay, that's cool. I got to share that with somebody.
You mentioned the Disney park trains. That was the one in California was the first first steam locomotive that I had ever seen. And I was, as I said earlier, I grew up in the state of Missouri, and they also had one down at Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And the first time that I rode that one, I vividly remember it, too, because they had a gunfight between the sheriff's posse and the bank robbers.
Part of the
and
trip.
So they were robbing the people on the train, and
it's really cool. There's so much to it. And the other thing about Disney, I'm getting off on Disney, but was there's the whole story about Walt and making the cartoons about Oswald and the character that he lost to Universal, essentially, and then having to take the train back from New York to Los Angeles, and in the process of that crossing the country, had to come up with something else to do. He didn't have a character anymore, and on that train trip, he came up with Mickey.
Exactly,
and it was Mortimer, and his wife, Lillian said, "That's a goofy name, I guess." So call it
goofy name.
Yeah, goofy name. Sorry, let's go back to the comedian thing again. I miss my calling, but so he called him Mickey. But that happened on a train trip, and if he wouldn't have had days on that train to go back, because that was the speed at the time, who knows if that ever would have happened.
He had his last dollar in his pocket when he was on that train. And to me, that's American ingenuity right there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And the piece about Disneyland, this is really sorry for this tangent. But the piece of it was that when he opened Disneyland, there were only a few things that he personally owned, and one of them was the railroad.
Exactly.
He maintained what do they call the rolling stock, I guess, but he owned the actual trains, not Disneyland. And it was Retlaw, I think, was the company that he set up, and it was this Walter spelled backwards. But it's just there's so much that I think trains have done over the years, not just to build the country, but just from a cultural standpoint. And it's pretty neat that you guys are doing all this. So how are you going to accomplish this huge goal? Because you guys are awesome, but I don't see the two of you doing this alone. So
and that's what happens next. We're trying to get more people to be able to catch on to our vision of what we're wanting to do. And by, working with people like you, helping getting our word out there, what our vision is for ultimately what we want to see happen.
Yeah.
Because, it's going to take a lot of money. And like one of our biggest things, we need a grant writer. That is critical to what we're doing because
that's a skill set. That's not nobody can just sit down and do this.
That's not just somebody. Sure, I'll fill that out in here. No, you got to know what particular to do. We need a grant writer, big time.
And I believe that's why our 501c3 was approved in such a short time, was because of the fact that we were explicit in how or what our mission was. And who knows? Maybe the gentleman that was the IRS representative.
Yeah, whoever reviewed the case.
I like trains. Here you go.
Take it where you can get it.
I truly believe that he was a rail fan.
Yeah.
And said, hey, these guys are good. Let's go for it.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's send them on their way.
Had to be a reason.
Let them do good things.
But but getting beyond just the two trains I talked on, the one thing that we have always had asked of us since we started this, a dinner train.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Everybody, every time we talk about 794, that comes up ultimately in the conversation. Y'all going to do a dinner train?
Well, and I've heard, back again, I guess Northern California, the wine train. So they go through the valley, and they're tourist draws, but they're also that history thing.
Exactly. And what we're looking at is now. How long have you been in San Antonio?
About 3.5 years.
Okay,
a little over.
Back in the late 80s, early 90s, we had a dinner train here. It was the most successful dinner train in the United States.
Really?
Ran out of San Antonio.
Wow.
It was called the Texas Southern. Incidentally, this goes back to the gentleman I worked for, Harold Schroeder.
I worked for him too.
Yeah, he did too.
Yeah.
Harold Schroeder owned it. That was his baby. He had other people that were part of it as well, but he didn't wholly own it. I should correct that. He didn't wholly own it, but he was the major push behind it. Well, anyway, the Texas Southern was awesome. It was a great dinner train. They had old F unit locomotives, kind of like when you think the old Santa Fe, all your train sets have that full cowl engine, like that, rounded nose. Mm-hmm. He had 3 of those, and I want to say maybe a dozen passenger cars. They had dome cars.
That's a big setup,
but it was meant for, fine dining. It was good stuff. The only drawback I ever saw to it, and being as I was a kid when this was going on, they only let kids on the trains twice a year. Mother's Day and Father's Day. That's the only time kids were on the train. Okay. Which I think really kind of pushes families away. And I think that's...
Families are one of the reasons, to do it. Yeah.
So, and because since it's been asked of us so many times, I kind of came up with an idea on how to remedy the situation. So we get running, we do the dinner train thing. Basically, split the dinner train in half. You have the diner car, the actual kitchen is in the middle. One side of the train's for families, the other side of the train's for the couples and individuals and stuff like that. That way the kids don't interfere with the people that don't want kids around, and then the families can be on the other side. Everybody gets to enjoy the ride. So, but that's what we're looking at is like, since it's been asked so much, and it was, kind of for most of us in the group, fond memory of seeing the train. Some got to ride it, some didn't. In fact, one of our members who joined recently. Oh, wow. Now there's a picture of it he's showing.
That's awesome.
One of our members was actually one of the guys involved with the dinner train, the Texas Southern back in the day. So he's got a lot of insight and stuff into it, and he's really, encouraging us to do it. So
what's your immediate, what's your next step? What are you working on right now?
When we look at the goals of things we're doing, we've got kind of 2 running concurrent. Working on the Alamo. We have an agreement with the city of Elmendorf. They basically want us to get it painted and looking better because as you'll go out there and see, there's some big rust pots up on top. That's mainly because the former owner had put like a mastic or it's like what they put on top of RVs or homes,
like a sealant type thing for the
Well, it's coming off, and it actually was coming off all the way from Houston. I was following the car back from Houston. I took several days off of work. Actually, I blew through all my PTO at work in about a month. Wow! But we followed the car back, and then you see the pieces of it flying off as going down. I was going, I hope that doesn't hit anybody's vehicle.
That's why you were behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Fortunately, none of them hit me. They fell off on the side of the road or on the other side.
That saves all the work of having to remove it, though. So that's even
exactly. Better. Well, it got all the loose pieces off.
That's right.
But anyway, we've still got stuff up there we got to take off. We got to sand it, prime it, paint it. again, this is an area where it's materials we need. You know, we can only put in so much of our own money into this. I mean, I dump in as much as I can. But like we got to get scaffolding out here. We've got the stuff to do the painting, but just we don't have enough of what we need to do things like the scaffolding. We need more members that can get out there and do it. I mean, we've got some of us are young members, some of us are older members. You're not an older member. Don't say anything. You're just in your 50s.
Yeah,
you don't get to see
the eyes that were there across the table there, boy. I tell you.
Well, I don't hear shows. I don't want to hear nothing. I work with a 65-year-old man that will work circles around you. Okay. But anyway, we're looking for people that are, wanting to get involved in this, wanting to help do this, and share the vision of what we're trying to do. And that's what we've been trying to do membership drives. We'll be doing another one this year. Okay. We're going to basically make it an annual thing as every year we're going to do a membership drive. We knock down the price of the membership from $35 to $25. So, I mean, maybe entice people. I mean, when you get into it, you really look at our membership, it's not expensive. I mean, when you look at others that are out there,
especially for a family, $50 for a family.
And the thing was, a lot of people have said, we've had previous, well, why haven't you raised the membership fees? The way I looked at it was the reason I haven't even brought it up to the board is like, why? Why do you want to increase membership fees on people? Yeah, we need the money, but I don't want to run people off. Exactly. And number two is, I personally don't feel we have enough to offer people yet to want to raise the membership fee. And then on the flip side of it, if we start getting a bunch of people in, why would you want to raise it anyway? Now you got more people to cover what we weren't having before. Yeah. So I just think, keeping it low for people to want to join, to become a part of this and help make this something better for the city of San Antonio. Because ultimately, I mean, you're going to see the tourism increase in San Antonio.
Especially when 794 becomes operational.
Because, I mean, people will come to see a steam engine.
And I was going to say, people shouldn't underestimate that. I mean, that really is.
And what I've already talked with the guys in Louisiana. Sorry, not California. Louisiana. It would be one where we're going to do a lot of research to see how we can get it over here. But we're talking about maybe get multiple of the engines together, like the remaining ones. Yeah. Because like B.L. was saying earlier, there's only 4 left. So if you think about it, you get 745 and 786 are the 2 closest to us. 771 up in Grapevine, they've not done anything to try to even restore it. I don't even know if they have any interest in restoring that engine. It's a pity. It'd be nice to see it running because it's different from the other 3.
Oh, okay.
But even though it's still a 10-0 Mikado.
Yeah, each one was tailored to where they were at with the uses. Ours was basically a mainline engine. And I'll get to the little unique PR on that here in a sec. But, we were talking, it's like, wouldn't it be cool to have the opportunity to get the remaining Southern Pacific Mikados, the MK5 class engines, together in one location? And we can maybe do it, 1 year it's in Austin, 1 year it's in San Antonio, 1 year it's over in Louisiana. Somehow figure out a way to make the logistics work. Because, I mean, and I'm not saying maybe yearly, maybe like every 5 years, every 10 years, something like that, where it's a special event. It's something that people can plan for. Hey, I missed the last one, but I'm going to make the next one, because it's not very often you get to have 3 sister locomotives sitting side by side or on the same train, or any opportunity to get that many engines together in a location. That will be a major draw to people.
Can you imagine just 2 of them getting together and having a double-headed train?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's this. I mean, it made me think about just RV folks. They'll get together and they do rallies, and they'll collect in one place, do whatever they want to do together, and that's nothing really focused around it except maybe the location. This is something completely different.
And my idea for this came from watching videos on YouTube. You should see what the guys do in Germany. When they have the big get-togethers of all the operating steam engines. I mean, it's pretty sad when you look at per capita of operating steam locomotives. The United States, I think it's like 200-something, 250, 260, something like that, engines running in the United States, steam locomotives. That's in England in one county.
Oh, yeah. That's what I've noticed that over the years, too. There's a huge following.
There's tons of little tiny narrow gauge railroads. I mean, I'm talking really small. I mean, what they call the cars, the cabins or whatever, they're it's just wide enough for two people to sit in.
Carriages.
Yeah, that's it. Carriages. Yeah. It's just wide enough for two people to sit in. They're that small. You look at it and you go, oh, that's a park train. No, that was a real railroad.
There's so much. I mean, you make me think of so much. This thing could go on for like 12 hours. But
yeah,
I mean, I remember seeing something online
Will
a
your
while back.
batteries last that long?
I actually have 37 minutes left. It's telling me I'm going to die.
I have to wrap this up.
No, I remember seeing some documentary where they were talking about the change in gauge from Spain to France, and that there's a difference in the width of the tracks, and they did that purposefully so that the French or the Spanish wouldn't invade the other country using the train.
Exactly.
It's like there's politics involved in all of this. Yeah. There's so much of the history. Yeah, that's just...
Well, when you want to talk about history, I know he was probably getting ready to say it. You know, the very unique part of American roading, which came from England, the whole 4 foot 8.5 inches, do you know what that originated from?
No.
4 foot and 8.5 inches, the exact width in between wheels of the Roman carriages.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That was carried over into England.
That's a lot bigger than I would have thought.
Yeah. That was carried over to England and whatever in the centimeters, millimeters, or metric system. But when it got here, it was 4 foot 8.5 inches, and that's the exact width of a carriage.
Now let's take it a little bit further. Do you know how come the space shuttle rocket solid booster rockets were the size that they were? Because they were made in Utah. They had to go through a railroad tunnel in order to get hauled all the way to Florida, Cape Canaveral, to launch the space shuttle.
That's pretty cool.
So the rocket boosters were limited to the size of the
design
tunnel.
Looked like because of the railroad.
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty neat. Now, my uncle, before he passed away, was the buyer. I think he was the chief buyer for Martin Marietta. They built the external tank for the space shuttle out in New Orleans, in Michoud. Yeah, there's just so many. That's pretty cool because I did a project, and Melissa's not on this show because she's in the other room looking at the museum stuff. But I did a project on the space shuttle when I was in social studies in like junior high, and I beat her. She had something on the Beatles, so I'll remember that till forever.
Are you talking the music group, the Beatles, or actually?
No, the music group, the Beatles.
Oh, don't let Kevin know.
Yeah. Really.
Oh my gosh.
We have one member that is a dyed-in-the-wool Beatles fanatic.
Oh, she definitely is.
And he plays guitar as well.
Oh, really? She definitely is.
Here comes the input. Here comes the input.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, well. So we're going to wrap it up now. But anyway.
You got the raspberry.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well. But this has been a lot of fun. And yeah, if y'all are up to it, we'd love to do it again one day.
Certainly.
If I can get my dad here, I know, like I said, that would be so much fun. But I've enjoyed this a whole heck of a lot.
Well, actually, let me think about it. I don't know if you'll have the time to get it out there. I don't know when you're going to have this podcast
This
ready.
is going to actually be released tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're recording this on a Saturday. It's going to go out tomorrow.
Let y'all know ahead of time. This coming Tuesday, we have an event down here. Mr. Millett, who I was talking about earlier, who also works for Univision. He's doing a segment on the Texas of olive oil. Now, he had done this previously, but they're doing parts in cooking. And that's going to be the 29th, I believe it's 30th. I'm sorry, the 30th, later in the evening. I believe it's going to be after 6 o'clock.
Okay.
But the plan is he wants to have enough people here. He wants to do this because they're actually going to be filming for Univision a cooking segment. And they're going to be using the Texas olive oil. Now, he will go into the history of it, but olive oil has become quite the thing south of here. Carrizo Springs, down towards Laredo.
That I didn't realize
because
either.
the climate is perfect for olives. It's almost identical over in Italy. So it's a perfect climate. They grow really well. It's really turned into quite the industry. But he's going to be doing a segment for Univision here. I think it's going to be done into 3 parts, but it's all going to be shot on Tuesday. Part of it's going to be done in the Alamo, and then the other part's going to be done out here next to the car as the car is a backdrop. So a lot of what he's been doing, he's pretty gung-ho on making everything he does benefit the organization. So
that's
whatever
awesome.
He's doing, the proceeds are coming to the
museum. It's a great idea. It's a great set.
And it helps bring revenue in that normally we wouldn't get. So this is going to be good. And part of Star Film Ranch is going to be doing that too. So
it's supposed to come out in November.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it'll be filmed on Tuesday, July 30th at around 6 o'clock, I guess you're talking about?
Yeah.
203 Bear Avenue.
Okay, 203 Bear Avenue in Elmendorf.
The other part and he wanted us to get this out. He's doing his wife owns a branch of Farmers Insurance.
Oh, okay.
And this is up off of I-10, almost across from the Dominion.
Okay.
It's going to be Saturday, September 7th at 6 p.m. and on. It's called the 4th Annual Texas Food and Music Extravaganza.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's going to have Augie Miers there, Flaco Jimenez. He's got 2 celebrity chefs. I'm trying to read the names here. Felipe Gaitan and Jose. I'm going to murder this name. Aguardo or something like that. I'm probably wrong.
Well, we'll look for the event. We'll post
what I can do,
there.
I'll send you the copy
that'd
of
be
this
great.
so you
Yeah,
can post
thank
it.
you.
By the way, on our website, we have a YouTube channel.
Okay, I haven't found the YouTube channel. I've seen all the other stuff.
Unfortunately, it's kind of obscured. But anyway, the concept is that originally I started hearing lyrics of songs that had all sorts of references, maybe not blatant, like Chattanooga Choo Choo or the A Train or anything like that. But what I've done is I've compiled a listing on YouTube of all sorts of different railroad referenced songs.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's like a playlist out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's over 200 different songs,
Oh, wow.
all different genres, all different artists.
That's cool. Yeah.
And there is a link to it on our website up at the very top of it. In fact, you'll find our Pinterest link, our YouTube link, or one of our YouTube links, and also, what's the other one? Instagram, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of building more social media accounts so that we can share through all forms.
Oh,
of it.
yeah. It's a great way to get information out, and especially the visual stuff, the photos and the, if you're doing videos while you're doing work,
and that's
people
one of
would
the
love
things
to
that
see
we're gonna
that.
start doing too.
Yeah, that's cool.
But anyway, for instance, one of the songs that a lot of people don't realize got a reference to the railroad is a Christmas song.
No, I can't think of that one.
The Grinch.
The Grinch.
The Grinch.
It's a certain line in the song.
Okay, I'm blanking, I guess.
So let me quote the line.
Okay.
Okay. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole.
Okay.
Okay. That goes back to the size of the gondolas that they were using, so that they couldn't ship anything over the length of 39.5 feet long.
The gondolas were exactly
only
40
40
foot.
feet.
As
Really?
all rail cars back in that time, the biggest they had was 40 foot. Now you had smaller ones, but the biggest was 40.
Oh my gosh.
And it
I
was
didn't
just
know
because
that.
they hadn't got into the whole, the bigger frame, strengthening the tubular steel, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they were restricted to certain things. That's what they did. A lot of it also because everything was riveted together. You'd end up, if you make something too
Yeah, it
big
would
with
flex.
too many rivets, it'll flex.
Yeah.
Well, as welding technology started picking up and they started going to welded stuff, then your car started getting bigger all the way up to some of your largest stuff is 70 foot, 74 foot, like the hoppers we have out here where I work. 74-foot plastic pellet hoppers. Those things are huge.
Yeah.
But then you start getting to like your big auto carriers that are 89, 90 feet long. And then they go beyond that to the articulated cars that are just, 120 feet plus.
Which they haul the windmill blades, the power blades.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, what do they use that for? Okay. Well, they've used them in Texas, that's for sure.
The bigger articulated cars mostly are specialized cars like auto carriers or what they call intermodal cars. They're 5-pack, 3-pack or 5-pack cars. They haul the 53-foot 18-wheeler trailers.
Okay.
So, little side note on something. Did you know the difference between the different types of containers? 53-foot containers are domestic only because we're the only country that can handle them outside of Mexico and Canada. So anything that's a 20-foot or 40-foot is an international container. So if you see a 20-foot or 40-foot container, that is stuff that's going
Yeah, you see
global.
people will use those to convert into houses. I mean, they use them for all kinds of
But
stuff.
the reason why the 53s don't, because a lot of your other countries, their roads are not like ours. They don't have the space. You go over, if you've ever been to Europe, you know the roads are real tight. The buildings are right on top of the roads. you can get a 24 to 40 foot container, but you're not going to get a 53 foot monstrosity through there.
To turn a corner.
Yeah,
right.
You're
Exactly.
not going to. The corners are too tight. So, that's another little tidbit of history. And something I mentioned earlier, and I forgot to go back to SASPAMCO.
Yes.
Do you know what SASPAMCO stands for?
No
It's
idea.
actually
It's an acronym.
Okay.
San Antonio Sewage Pipe and Manufacturing Company.
Oh my gosh.
All the sewage pipe for San Antonio back in the early days was clay. It was not made in San Antonio. It was made down here at that place. That was SASPAMCO is the name of the company. And they made everything because you have clay pits. If you ever go out here and look around on the ground, it's red clay dirt. It's got sand with it and it's clay, and it works great for making brick and
that makes
pottery
sense.
and pipes. So I was going to go to that, and I forgot when I was talking about SASPAMCO earlier. So
That's no
just a
problem.
little tidbit. I'm sure people don't know that it's part of the history of the area.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Well, we do. I do. And Melissa was here a second ago, peeking around the corner. I really appreciate it. This has been a whole lot of fun for me. I've learned. There she is again. Oh gosh.
You can't get away from it.
No. 25 years. I say this on almost every podcast. 25 years, people. 25 years.
Well,
Almost
I've been
26.
35 with mine.
Has it really? Oh, time flies.
Yep.
But anyway, no, thank y'all for being on the show. Thank you for doing this and taking your time to do it. I know what time is it now? Yeah, you guys have been open for a while. Sorry for taking up your time. But yeah, y'all are open on Saturdays from 12 to 6, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So come on out here, check out the location, check out what the projects are, join. And to start off with right now, go to your social and find them on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, Pinterest, wherever else, and look for the San Antonio Railroad Heritage Museum, and just follow what they're doing. It's really some interesting stuff. There's a ton of history out there. If you're a history buff, if you're a San Antonio buff, if you're a rail fan, if you've ever done any of the things we've talked about today, you'll get a kick out of it. And these two guys are great to talk to. So if they're here, bend their ear a little bit, because I'm sure they got a story for you. So for everybody listening, well, first of all, I guess for BL, for Gary, for me, for Melissa in the corner, thank you all for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate it, and we'll see you all around the Alamo City.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Riverwalk. Send your comments, questions, and suggestions to podcast@beyondriverwalk.com. As always, subscriptions to our show are free and available wherever you find podcasts, as well as on our website. Until next week, join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more conversations about our community.